Hey everybody, guess where I am? I'm down in my office. This is where I do a lot of the research on films that I like to bring you. We got our Cracker Jack type of equipment down here. Here's our monitor, and right now we're kind of looking at some stuff. This is a part of the film that you're going to be seeing later on. This is Sherlock Holmes and the Secret Weapon, 1942. This is one of the Universal versions of the Sherlock Holmes. And of course, when most people think of Sherlock Holmes, they think of Basil Rathbone. To me, if I have an image in my head of anything about Sherlock Holmes, it's Basil Rathbone and also the old Watson, Nigel Bruce. This is a series of films that really started over at 20th Century Fox in 1939 with the Hounds of Baskerville. They made two films over at Fox, Hounds of Baskerville and The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The series was dumped and Universal picked it up. Now, ironically, 20th Century Fox felt like they really didn't think that they'd have an audience for this kind of thing. So after two films, Universal picks it up and they make 12 more. This happens to be the second in the series of the Universal. The first was The Voice of Terror. This one here is The Secret Weapon, and one of the things that's interesting about the Universal take on Sherlock Holmes, there he is under disguise. That's one of the things you see quite frequently in a lot of the Holmes things, is that he takes, he's a man of many faces, is that they also set them in modern times. No longer set in the Edwardian period. This is him fighting Nazis. And the secret weapon, here is the spy right here, or the scientist who is there trying to secret out a certain kind of a gun sight that he has constructed. And the Nazis are after him and trying to get that as well. This one here is an interesting one too. It has Dr. Moriarty, who is the arch enemy of Sherlock Holmes, if you've read many of the stories or seen some of the earlier films or many of his films. This one here has Lionel Atwill playing the Moriarty character. George Zucco played him at certain points as well. So did Henry Daniell. I like Lionel Atwill and I like George Zucco as the Moriarty character. It's kind of interesting. Moriarty is really a dastardly character. He's an Englishman who's out to, well, do dirty deeds to the British so he can get some money selling stuff, secret codes and things like that to the Nazis. This film does deal very much with stuff that's going on in the war, sabotage, secret weapons, things like that that people want, and all have to deal with some kind of code, decoder ring, you know. We got our At the Movies with Film cereal out these days, and you might be lucky you reach in and get more than cereal. Well, I didn't get it this time, but you might get a decoder ring. You know, decoder ring that'll allow you to sort of sort out sort of the secret weapon. What is going on? Now this film here, I really enjoyed this. It's directed by a guy named Roy William Neill, and he did most, if not all, of the Universal films. There were a couple that he didn't do, but some of the key ones, Faces of Death, Spider-Woman, the Scarlet Claw, Pearl of Death, those are some of the Sherlock Holmes films that he directed. He's also known for doing like Sherlock Holmes in Washington and Frankenstein Meets Wolfman. I like that, Frankenstein Meets Wolfman. The film is written by Scott Darling. You remember Scott Darling. We showed some of the Mr. Wong films. Scott Darling wrote a lot of the screenplays for that. Remember, he's the guy that they found floating in the middle of the ocean dead. Yep, Scott Darling. So kind of famous for dying. You know, if all of us have that lucky like that, you know, then I think we're in good shape. This film also has some other characters. It brings us Mary Gordon, who is the Mrs. Hudson, the housekeeper that's a perennial in these films. Likewise, it'll bring you Dennis Hoey, who plays Inspector Lestrade, who is a common character across many of these Baker Street type of films. The look of these films, I kind of like them set in modern times. It's got that real spy noir look, some of the dark shadows and the low-key light that you see, I think really lends itself well to these kind of things. Some people really don't like that these films were set into modern times or contemporary times. I'm not one of them. I like a lot of the variety of different Holmeses that are set in the Edwardian times, but I like them too when they're set like this. It kind of reminds me of the other, well, films that kind of have some of our well-known characters fighting Nazis, like Tarzan. Remember, Tarzan has to fight the Nazis, as he calls them. Nazis! Yeah. Some of the more famous people also who played, even though we think of the Basil Rathbone playing Sherlock Holmes the most, there are other people who have played him as well. John Barrymore, did a great job in the silent days. Arthur Wantner did a really nice job in some of the British takes. Raymond Massey even played him at one time. Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing both took times in playing him. So did Nicole Williamson in the 7% Solution, where basically Holmes meets Sigmund Freud. Nice job there. And of course, in They Might Be Giants, we have George C. Scott, who thinks that he is Holmes. Fun little film there. Well, it's not quite elementary that all of these films are all equally as good, but it is quite elementary that Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce do a fantastic job in portraying Sherlock Holmes and old Dr. Watson. Why don't you sit back, get yourself a little bit of popcorn. I know a lot of people eat different kinds of things. I happen to like dry cereal, so I'm going to grab in here and get myself some of this lummy stuff. You know, might not be real good for you, but it better taste good. Let me see. I like this stuff. If you see this stuff sitting on your grocery shelf out there, well, if you do, you're crazy. But if you do, buy it. It's good stuff. Doesn't cost a lot. Get it the big mammoth box. It's worth every ounce. Well, Sherlock Holmes, Secret Weapon. Yep, I didn't get my little decoder ring, so I'm not going to be able to decipher this film. I'm going to have to watch the whole thing again because I kind of forgot what the whole code was about. So maybe you can watch the film and get the code yourself. Let's roll them, Smokey.